Yo! Happy holidays, everyone. My name is Dalen, and today we have TierZoo, the Crustacean tier list. Y'all, it's been a while since December 8th, recording Game Award stuff, since I've uploaded a reaction video. We are finally back, y'all. The new year's here. It is upon us tomorrow, so we gonna check this out. I don't know whatever reaction videos I got, but we gonna react to this and then probably play some Street Fighter, Tekken 8. Get used to my the new fight stick I got for Christmas. You know, cause I need to work on that. But let's check this out, y'all. My headphones plugged in? Of course not. Of course not. Hurry up! Hurry up! Hurry up! Hurry up! Hurry up. Hurry up, please. Oh. Okay, it was connected to my phone. Okay. Please hurry up. Please hurry up. Please hurry up. Also, we're streaming, by the way. Okay, thank you. A little loud, I'm not gonna lie. Alright. Oh my gosh, your arm! No, what? Wait, the mantis shrimp. Is that the... Isn't that the strongest creature alive? I made a video on the mantis shrimp, I think.
Crustaceans are some of the most popular builds in the entire game. In fact, they're so popular.
Isn't the mantis shrimp the one that like shoot sonic booms out their fists and like boil water with their punches and shit?
Popular that it's become sort of a meme that every player will eventually
I
drop their current character and switch to being a crab main. But just how competitively viable are crustaceans really? Which unique abilities does the crustacean class make use of that enabled them to become such a resilient force across so many of the game's expansions and balance patches? And are they actually an optimal build choice in the current meta? Or are they just an easy to pilot, low skill floor character? We'll discuss all this and more as we rank the most notable builds on the Crustacean tier list. This video was sponsored by GiveWell. Before we get the key abilities they use to accomplish, inherit all of the main perks are part of the game strategy. Before we get into the tier list, let's first discuss the Crustacean faction's general game strategy and the key abilities they use to accomplish it. Crustaceans are part of the larger faction of arthropods, and so crustaceans inherit all of the main...
I was about to say, I wouldn't put crabs in my tier list of like, not tier list, but in my top favorite animals. Ducks, dolphins, turtles, wolves, #1, and penguins are my favorite animals. You know?
Main perks of the arthropod class. The most important one, of course, is their exoskeletal
crabs
armor,
are cool, but
which provides a huge defense.
Oh, by the way, I'm a Cancer.
Given that most crustaceans have to contend with some of the most dangerous builds in the
crabs,
game,
but
this extra protection is crucial to their viability.
Not really.
Their carapace, which is the thickest, sturdiest, and most important link in their armor,
definitely tastes better than lobster.
From seabird beaks, fish jaws, and many of the other threats common in aquatic environments. It does, however, have the same weakness as all exoskeleton-type builds, which is that their defense stat drops drastically for a short time when leveling up. If their armor ever does fail them, this doesn't immediately mean game over. Crustaceans have the
Whoever did this gotta be fired. There's no way you were selling live crabs.
Game over. Crustaceans have the incredible ability to regenerate HP after taking damage, even being able to regrow entire limbs. So even something as devastating as using a claw
I've never seen that before.
Have the incredible ability to regenerate.
What? Nah, that's crazy. These are some aliens.
Even being able to regrow entire limbs. So even something as devastating as losing a claw or a leg isn't something crustaceans can't recover from, and in fact can be the optimal play to distract an opponent and escape a fight. This ability makes crustaceans a very beginner-friendly build. as you can make a lot of mistakes and still progress through your playthrough relatively unhindered.
Can they climb on walls?
Crustaceans
right?
also have uniquely specialized limbs that come to 2 points rather than 1. This makes it super straightforward to spec them into various different specialized opposable claws, which can be optimized for slicing, crushing, piercing, or grappling.
Hey yo, what that nigga doing with the knife?
Can be optimized for slicing, crushing.
Hey yo, hold on.
Piercing.
What that boy doing?
I've said in the past that I think crustaceans are a broadly mid-tier class, and I think this still holds up. Crustaceans have a lot of interesting tools at their disposal, but due to their middle-of-the-road stat spread, they are constantly fighting an uphill battle against the many high-tier threats they need to contend with, and have to play things perfectly to not get run over in these matchups. So, let's see how the individual crustacean builds fare and get into the tier list. Starting us off in F tier, we have the barnacle. The barnacle is a crustacean build with an almost
I guess anything with crust is a crustacean. It's interesting. I was only thinking like crustaceans were like crabs and lobsters and like
strategy. As
you know
a
what I
barnacle
mean.
larva, you find a spot and then attach to it and filter feed for the rest of your playthrough. Now, I'm not dunking on players who enjoy idle games. I'm a fan myself. However, this strategy does have some major flaws. Despite the fact that barnacles have the highest defense stat of any crustacean, the survivability of a barnacle is entirely contingent on their choice of parking space. Barnacles can attach to just about any surface, from ship hulls to cement walls, to whales and even other crustaceans. Choosing a spot on a non-living surface leaves the barnacle vulnerable to predators. As high as their defense stat may be, there are plenty of builds that are willing to invest in anti-shell defense abilities, like the acidic attacks of the starfish or the drilling attacks of the whelk snail, neither of which are uncommon on the reefs and coastlines.
Are snails crustaceans too? Because they got
But if they opt for a living host, which is easier said than done by the way, then their survivability is completely tied to the survival of their host, a tenuous gambit in a metagame as hostile as
like
the ocean
parasites?
server. Whales are a pretty safe choice, but opportunities to secure real estate on a whale are few and far between. Much more likely you'll need to settle for property on the shell of another crustacean, which, as we'll see later on this list, is quite a gamble. Personally, I'd say if you want to play a mostly AFK marine build, opt for the scallop, as you'll still get to chill and filter feed most of the time, but can still escape if need be. Also in F tier, we have the shrimp. Now, shrimp are a super diverse group with a ton of interesting strategies, but in general, shrimp make very poor use of the crustacean build's unique abilities. Broadly speaking, shrimp have weak legs, no eye stalks, and small claws. No eye stalks might seem trivial, but eye stalks are actually a pretty useful ability, allowing a player to take cover in the sand or under the seabed, while still remaining vigilant. Shrimp rely heavily on that same strategy, but because they cannot surveil their surroundings while hiding, a clever predator can easily just wait until they resurface and pick them off. Attacking a shrimp is also a lot less risky than attacking most crustaceans, as their damage-dealing abilities are far worse than the rest of the faction. The shrimp's scaled-down appendages are a trade-off meant to buff its mobility. Shrimps have spec'd into shorter, flatter legs that increase their aquatic movement speed in a way somewhat reminiscent of a fish's pelvic fins. This is a neat idea that means shrimp can freely swim rather than walking along the ocean floor. But in practice, this kind of just meant that shrimp ended up as the seahorses of the crustacean faction. A tankier but slower moving swimmer that can't adequately defend itself or evade attacks, so it gets bullied by every other nearby
seahorse
player.
tier list.
Shrimp do have one escape ability, and that they can very quickly dash backwards. But this is of course very predictable and exploitable by experienced players. Now, it's important to note that while they may not have the best stats, crafty shrimp mains have been able to reach some level of viability in the meta, either by speccing into debuff cleansing abilities and playing as a predator support class, or by using a quirk of the game engine which allows them to fire off powerful short-range sonic projectiles called cavitation bubbles that can stun other players. These are both respectable strategies that merit higher tier placement, but as a whole, shrimp are stuck in the bottom tier. First in D tier, we've got the isopod.
D
Other than
tier?
the barnacle,
Is higher than shrimp?
Shrimp are stuck in the bottom tier.
Okay.
First in D tier, we've got the isopod. Other than the barnacle, which literally cannot move, The isopod has the highest base defense stat of any crustacean on this list.
He's so
its shell is
powerful.
perfect for deflecting attacks, and when they curl into a ball like an armadillo, there are very few predators that can threaten them unless they're several orders of magnitude larger outright. However, the isopod has essentially no damage-dealing abilities whatsoever. It has no attacks, no poison, nothing to threaten aggressive players with, and so against a persistent attacker it will essentially always lose. Isopods are a diverse and widely distributed group, with both terrestrial and aquatic variants. The terrestrial variants, known as woodlice, pillbugs, and roly-polies, function very similarly to miniature cockroaches, using their flat shape to wedge themselves into hard-to-reach positions, and only leaving the safety of these places in order to scavenge for loot. The larger aquatic variants of the isopod are usually similar in their strategy, but can also opt for a parasitic playstyle, where they actually fuse with a fish player, destroying and replacing the fish's tongue. This parasitic strategy is great for farming XP and is super AFK, but does come with pretty much all the same risks I mentioned about the barnacle. If the fish gets attacked and defeated, the isopod usually goes down with the ship. Technically, if given the chance, they could detach and escape, but in the marine meta, chances like that are quite rare, and without a host, they're likely to just get picked off anyway. Not the worst crustacean, but it's leaving a lot on the table not making use of the crustacean's highly customizable forelimbs.
Crayfish.
Next in D tier we have the crayfish, also known as the crawdad. This is
I never really ate a lot of crayfish before. Definitely need to try like a good seafood place that got crayfish, just to see how they compare to lobster and crabs. You know,
lobster subclass, which mainly sticks to freshwater servers. This means that unlike the lobster,
I'm not familiar
which
with
needs
the
to be
flavor
prepared
of
to contend
crayfish
with the
that
likes
much.
of sharks, octopus, eels, and the multitude of dangerous threats you'd find in the ocean servers, the worst things a crayfish might run into would probably be something like a turtle or largemouth bass. And yet, even in this much less punishing environment,
are crayfish just like a faction of lobsters and crabs, or is that like another? Hold on, let me listen to what he's saying.
Crawdad. This is a smaller variant of the lobster subclass, which mainly sticks to freshwater servers. This means that unlike the lobster, which needs to be prepared to contend with the likes of sharks, octopus, eels, and the would probably be something like a turtle or largemouth bass. And yet, even in this much less punishing environment, crayfish still underperform. They have solid matchups against frogs, which is true of essentially every other build in existence as well, and they can sometimes hold their own against freshwater fish due to their armor, but pretty much anything beyond that and they begin to struggle. They don't have claws that are anywhere near as powerful as some of the other crustaceans on this list, and so when confronted with an adversary, they often lose if they can't escape. Their only real advantage is that their smaller size opens up a lot of additional options to where they can run for cover and hide, as they can fit into very small openings between rocks and debris on a riverbed. However, because they often aggregate so close to the shoreline, they're vulnerable to being picked off by birds, whose pinpoint precision strikes can hit them even in partial cover. Without proper offensive capabilities, they'll always find themselves outclassed by their more powerful relative. A build which I think we've name-dropped enough times already to just go ahead and move on to.
Okay.
First in C tier we have the lobster. Lobsters are a solid marine tier build with lots of strengths, the most obvious of which is their incredibly large and powerful claws, which grant the lobster one of the highest grip strengths in the entire game, able to easily crush through the defenses of just about any other player, and inflict devastating damage in the process. This is excellent for defense, and also for taking control of an objective or point of interest on the seafloor. Similar to shrimp, lobsters also have fairly decent mobility, although the only direction they can move quickly is directly backwards. This is all quite solid, however, the lobster does have its own share of weaknesses in addition to the standard crustacean weaknesses. This backward mobility is fairly limiting, and means that attacking a lobster from behind often leaves them with very little counterplay options, as their claws cannot reach backwards, and if they try to use their burst mobility option, their only choice will be to move directly towards you, unless they slowly reposition themselves so that their back faces away from the threat. Now, this is in contrast to the next build on our list, which I think is a bit more versatile in its mobility.
The true crabs!
Next in C tier, we finally arrive at the crab build.
Okay.
The poster child for the crustacean class, and one of the most reliable and consistent mid-tiers in the entire game. Crab claws are extremely customizable, able to be optimized for whatever best suits the current meta. Some spec into smaller, more precise claws that enable to capture small prey more easily. Some spec into sharp-edged claws used for slashing at soft-bodied opponents, such as cephalopods. And some opt for pointed claws, perfect for jabbing at pesky fish who can't mind their business. However, the thing that really sets crabs apart from other crustaceans is that they've opted not to spec into the pleon trait. The pleon is the rear abdomen seen on most other crustaceans we've discussed so far. It's the tail part which allows shrimp and lobsters to use that special burst mobility option. The trade-off, though, is that the pleon vastly increases their hurt box and functions as a weak point. In order to have the flexibility required to give them that quick movement, it can't be as heavily armored as the rest of them. So, while crayfish, shrimp, and lobsters fold pretty quickly when being attacked from behind, crabs can usually just shrug it off. However, just because they can't dash backward instantly like other crustaceans doesn't mean crabs are immobile. Instead, crabs focus on lateral mobility, which turns out is often much more useful for dodging attacks. They can quickly swim or dash to the left or right when needed.
That boy
this might not be as impressive as the lobster's dash, it's still often enough to save their life anyway. Now, I don't want to give you the impression that I think crabs are at all overpowered. They still get bodied plenty, especially by builds that spec into high intelligence. But the strategy that goes into optimizing your character's hurt box is not something I think we should overlook, as that actually is a pretty high-level play. First in B tier, we have the hermit crab. Now, unlike basic crabs, hermit crabs do have a pleon, which they need to protect by scavenging and equipping the shell of a defeated snail player. Technically, this means they aren't true crabs. But what really matters is that this ability is busted. It allows them to match the defense stat of the barnacle while retaining their ability to move. And on top of all that, the shells themselves can be augmented with extra perks, courtesy of sea anemone players. And using this combo, hermit crabs can add a toxic sting to their defense too. I won't spend too much time on hermit crabs because I've already got a full video about them. But just understand that they've turned the main weakness of the false crab crustaceans into a major strength. The largest variant of the hermit crab, the coconut crab, can actually reach such giant sizes that it surpasses the need for a protective shell, since there's essentially nothing that's able to threaten them. And by dropping the heavy shell, they gain the ability to climb, which can allow them to turn the tables on bird defense, which normally have an oppressive matchup against crustaceans.
And they big.
Next in B tier we have...
What is happening here? What is this tiny little bitch? Tell me this guy could beat... Well, I don't know, let me see.
Have the copepod. Now, this may seem like a weird conclusion on this tier list, as I usually don't discuss builds from the microbe weight class. But copepods really do deserve a mention, as they pretty much have the entire zooplankton metagame on lock. They're one of the most numerous builds in the entire game, and can survive almost anywhere due to a multitude of elemental resistances. They're almost like water bears in a way, except in addition to being quite durable, they're also easily the most mobile of all plankton builds. Most other zooplankton only start...
Planktons are crustaceans? So is Mr. Krabs and Plankton like distant cousins or some shit? Huh? I didn't even notice.
Start out in that weight class,
maybe not all planktons
using their
are
microscopic size to avoid detection from larger predators. However, as they level up, they increase in size and phase out of the planktonic metagame entirely. However, while in their planktonic stage, they're usually not super competitive, as they've spent all of their evolution points on abilities that they only unlock later on. Copepods, on the other hand, are fully optimized to max out their viability against other zooplankton, and thus completely dominate the meta in that space. They're not completely invincible, of course, and do often get taken down by colonial microbes, such as the Portuguese man-o-war and its relatives. But among free-roaming zooplankton, copepods reign pretty much uncontested in their niche. This is especially problematic for human mains, because copepods also ally with Vibrio bacteria to gain the bioluminescence ability, but can also transmit the deadly disease cholera.
Okay. Damn.
And at the top of our list, in A tier, we have the mantis shrimp. The mantis shrimp is famously one of the most stacked builds the game has ever seen. At least
I think it's the one that I made a video on, right? Kind of want to check my video just to see. I think I already like reacted to this. Let's see. Mantis shrimp. right? Yeah, there we go. The mantis shrimp. 11 months ago. It's crazy. Alright, so I did.
To offense. Instead of the standard crustacean grappling claws, mantis shrimp opt for either raptorial blades or bludgeoning clubs, which they can swing with truly unparalleled strength. These attacks deal devastating damage to any player unlucky enough to be caught on the receiving end. And in many cases, these attacks result in a one-hit kill.
These niggas are built different
the mantis shrimp has a lot of
they
hype
could break
and attention surrounding it, with a lot of players decrying the mantis shrimp as OP and broken and so on. The hype around its power stat is absolutely deserved. However, we can't forget that this build has a body plan roughly similar to the build that I've rated second lowest on this tier list. Their large, less heavily armored Pleon sticks out quite far from their carapace, which can leave them vulnerable to ambush attacks, just like a regular shrimp or lobster, which is not an uncommon occurrence given their lack of camouflage. In addition, their small fins and small legs don't exactly translate to a high mobility stat, which is why, despite the fact fins and small legs don't
that power is not capped.
Exactly translate to a high mobility stat, which is why, despite the fact that they're packing incredible heat, mantis shrimp usually only hunt the absolute slowest of prey: clams, scallops, and snails.
Right, bro, can you imagine a mantis shrimp the same size as a tiger?
I think the existence of a proper tank buster build is healthy for the overall
that tiger
but I do think the power of the mantis shrimp gets exaggerated a lot on forums and discussion boards. Abilities like being able to see color and polarize light in a unique way, or the bonus sonic damage effect their punches create. These are fun little quirks, but I don't think they significantly affect the mantis shrimp's place on the tier list. Give them running legs and the ability to breathe on dried land, and we probably need to start discussing a ban though. Overall, I think crustaceans are in a solid spot in the current meta. Not overpowered, but not to be underestimated either. Crustaceans and insects are closely related, and are the most successful factions within the arthropod class. So it's only natural that they'd constantly be compared against each other. Insects are far more dominant on land, whereas crustaceans reign supreme in the water.
That's nuts.
Though they're similar in many ways, insects have a lot of unique abilities that crustaceans do not, such as venom, eusociality, and most importantly, flight. Meanwhile, most of the important abilities we see in crustaceans are also found in the insect faction. Sturdy defensive armor, the ability to equip shells of defeated tanks, quick burst mobility, regenerating limbs. These are all things insects can do too. I will give credit where it's due though. Crustaceans do have an edge when it comes to that regen perk I mentioned. Insects can regenerate every time they molt, but insects actually stop molting once they reach their level cap and can no longer regenerate after that. This coincides with insects getting their wings, which is kind of paradoxical because it means their most fragile feature is also the only feature they can never regenerate. Crustaceans, by contrast, continue to molt and regenerate even after reaching their full potential, reinforcing the idea that crustaceans are a more beginner-friendly build. Crustaceans are arthropods, one of the most diverse factions in the game. And while many are important parts of their ecosystems, many others, including the copepod, have the infrastructure to protect the same. Crustaceans could go much further and do a lot more good if used in the most efficient way. This is where today's sponsor, GiveWell, comes.
W video. I learned a lot. I didn't know that crabs could actually regenerate. That's kind of nuts. Or crustaceans, you know. But anyways, and it has it. That is the end of this video, y'all. I hope you all enjoyed. If you did, leave a like on this video, subscribe for more content, and I hope you all enjoy the rest of your day. Can't wait for the next TierZoo video. Can't wait to see what else you got for us. Anyways, that is all. Also, enjoy your holidays. New Year's in 2 hours for me, Eastern time. So, yeah. Peace.